Welcome to Ask the Coaches. My name is Pilar Alessandra and I'm the instructor and script consultant here at the On the Page Writers Studio. I'm also the author of the Coffee Break Screenwriter, and the Coffee Break Screenwriter breaks the rules, and I'm the host of the On the Page podcast.
Hi, I'm Jen Grisanti and I am the story career consultant at Jen Grisanti Consultancy, Inc. I am a writing instructor for NBC, for Writers on the Verge, a former 12-year studio executive, and a speaker. I am also an author of 3 books: Storyline, Finding Gold in Your Life Story, Change Your Story, Change Your Life, and TV Writing Toolkit.
Hi, I'm Jessup. I'm a career coach for emerging and professional screenwriters. Once upon a time I was a writer myself, many moons ago, also worked development. Now I am a consultant for the Universal Writers Program. I also mentor for the Final Draft Big Break contest winners, and I'm the author of 2 books, Getting It Right and Breaking In: Tales from the Screenwriting Trenches.
So this is part 2 of Ask the Coaches. What we're doing is just answering questions that you've written in on Twitter and Facebook and email about the craft and business of screenwriting and TV writing. We have some questions here. Let's bring up the big box here, right?
Bring out the box.
We're going to pick from these randomly. We're not using your names, just to protect everybody's confidentiality. And also, I think that everybody's asking questions that everyone wants answers to, really. So we'll pick them out and see what we. Yeah,
I do.
You go.
I'll do it.
Here you go.
All right. Big question.
Oh wait, this one's for you.
This one's for me.
So, how do I get my script read by the people at Netflix?
Good question, and I know a lot of people are really excited about the Netflix, Amazon, Apples of the world, and Hulu, and a number of others who've come into the game. At the end of the day, Netflix is not to discount them in any way, shape, or form, but at the end of the day, they're just another buyer. So today, when reps take material out to shop it, be it a feature screenplay or a pilot, they are going to go on a pitch tour, on a presentation tour, on a reading tour. Netflix is going to be one of those stops. So for good or bad, while a lot of people feel that yes, Netflix is buying a ton of content, they tend to go through fairly traditional channels, which is going through representation, going through development channels to source their material.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that I have heard from some writers that they're more open to newer writers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how true that is. However, going through representation is always the best way to go into the network, unless, of course, you have a relationship that gets you in the door.
I have a question about Netflix for
Please.
the 2 of you guys. They seem to have so many different kinds of material that they're looking for these days, right? So at first it was like, ooh, Netflix has TV shows, right? Now we've got YA features.
Well, they've really resurrected the rom-com significantly. Now they've also expanded a lot in the horror genre. They're really looking to cater to as many subscribers as they can, right? They're looking to make sure that they're servicing a very wide viewership. And because of that, if you have industry relations, for example, I have a writer that I work with that used to be a development executive who knew somebody who went into development at Netflix, was able to get a meeting. So they are sourcing a lot of material, but they tend to really look for people that have some experience or know somebody. So it's not really the blind submission universe, but they are trying to make sure that they are catering to their entire possible viewership, because their model is subscriptions, right? So if you want everybody to need a subscription, you have to make sure that everybody has something to watch and to keep them coming back.
So they don't have just one sensibility anymore, as opposed to when they first started with TV shows like Orange is the New Black, right? Everybody went, oh, that is the Netflix sensibility. Now it is everybody.
Well, now they're in business with Shonda Rhimes and
Ryan Murphy
and now the guys from Game of Thrones.
Yep.
So it's like it's all over the place as far as a brand and a specific type of show, which is fascinating because Netflix used to be event television.
Yeah, they started
Yeah.
out wanting to have the HBO model, right?
Mm-hmm.
Prestige TV. And they did it quite well. They did it very well with House of Cards and with Orange the New Black. They both premiered for them really strong right out the gate. But then they really diversified their portfolio to make sure that they're properly catering to everyone.
Which is great for writers
Yes.
because it's a very broad brand.
The more content,
Yes.
the more you guys get hired.
And I love rom-coms, so I'm delighted they brought those back.
Yes.
All right, what do we got? Oh, this is also your JoJo. Someone likes your writing, asks to see what else you have. You have newer work, but it's not ready. Is it bad form to say, I have script XYZ, but I'd like to give it another pass before I send that? Is that a momentum killer to ask for time?
I think ultimately the question is how much time are we asking for? And this is why we always want to have a second piece that's ready to show when you send out your marquee piece, right? You want to have that second piece that really confirms, yes, this writer is not a one-trick pony. He or she can repeat well. There's no risk that an agent, a manager, is going to work hard to build a career for somebody that really just has one script in them. So we always want to have that second sample that maybe is not quite at that level, but 10% away. If you are 2 or 3 weeks away from finishing a new piece and you know that it's going to be ready to send, then in my opinion, and it is an opinion, everybody has their own point of view on it, you can very easily say, listen, I'm just buttoning up this last piece. I'm going to have it to you in 10 days. I'm going to have it to you in 2 weeks. Ultimately, if you wait 6 months, they kind of forgot about you already. They're not that excited. But I think that if it's a matter of 10 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks at the most, and by 3 weeks I don't mean 5 or 6, then I do think you can get away with it.
Stop putting off your rewrite.
Exactly.
This will certainly force your hand.
Yep.
Well, and the biggest mistake you could make is turning in something that isn't ready.
Agreed.
So that is definitely not something you want to do. I totally agree with you both, and I think Lee with you don't want to wait 6 months. However, if you're going to wait a month or a little over a month, I am a believer that if the connection was made, that the interest is there. And so it is worth your putting the time that you need to have to get the script where it needs to be. You never want to make a wrong impression when you have someone who's interested in your material.
And just to build on that, Jen, the bottom line is you never send in work that's not ready.
Yeah.
Ever, no
Yeah.
matter what. You don't send work in that is not ready, that hasn't been vetted, that's not ready to show.
But that shouldn't have to take you 6 months to do it.
I agree.
I believe
Yes.
another.
All right. Let's see.
Oh, she's reading them.
I know.
Jen was teaching that.
All right. So, Pilar,
Okay.
if you have a period drama
Uh-huh.
TV pilot that most production companies seem to like but are reluctant to take on
Uh-huh.
because period drama by newer writers is too hard to sell for them, how do you get past that?
That's not one for me. That's more of a Lee thing. That's fine.
It isn't, but I noticed before that you picked that out.
Well, the reason I picked it out is I think it's everybody asks this question, right? That they're always told, like, whatever you do, don't have a period piece. Nobody does period pieces.
Yet
And then they
everyone's doing
right,
it.
and everybody they watch it. Get an Academy Award every year.
Yeah.
I think most of the time when you're getting something like this, it's because it's expensive to do a period piece, and also. I hate to say this, but the 90s is now a period piece, okay? Because you have to change up the clothing, you have to change up the cars, you have to get certain things off the walls or get things onto the walls. And so do know that it's really money at the core of that. So if it's changeable, like the 90s, ask yourself, is it something that could still be done in 2019? We're still dealing with a whole lot of issues. I guess if it's a costume piece, that is where I'm going to defer to you guys, because I want people to write what they really want to write, but I do understand why production companies will be like, we can't afford a costume piece. What do they do to get past this?
I mean, I can tell you that just a few days ago I was talking with a manager friend who had read a writer that I know read the pilot, said, I love the pilot, I can't take on another period piece. Just can't do it, too hard to sell, too much work, new writer, forget about it. And I can tell you that regularly I'll have conversations with my working writers, specifically TV writers, who'll say, oh, I know I need to develop a new pilot, I have this idea, but it's period, so I know I can't do it. It's all about deniability, right? Everybody's looking for the undeniable script. And period is one of those markers that make readers, be they agent managers, executives, put the material aside. That said, if you are incredibly passionate, to me the most important thing is passion on the page. If you are incredibly passionate and you have to tell this story, and come hell or high water, this is the only script you ever write, you're going to write this one because it's what you have to say. I've seen those screenplays and those pilots kind of cut through the noise because they were so great, because there was so much passion and so much power instilled in them. So while I don't think that you have to absolutely stay away from period, you should know what it means if you take on a period project, that it will be harder to get it read, potentially harder to get it represented, harder to get it into network streamers, cable companies, etc. But if you love it, tell that story. For me, that's the most important thing.
And it'll be a great writing sample for
Yeah.
you, because if it is a voice that they love and a must read, that'll still get you in the door or get you other work. As we're always saying, this isn't about the big sale anyway, usually.
Well, and I mean, first of all, when you look at shows like Gentleman Jack and Mad Men and an endless amount of period pieces, Game of Thrones, like, as much as they're saying no, 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 and you should listen to that, you should follow your passion. But the biggest thing I think out of all of this is you have to diversify your writing portfolio. So you should never put all your eggs in one basket if you have a period piece, because a period piece, as both of you touched on, is a harder sell. However, I'm definitely of the belief that they're winning Emmys and Golden Globes and they're selling. And so it all depends. Personally, like 80s, 90s, I like those period pieces if I have an understanding of why they chose that time period versus like when people first told me, oh, you gotta watch Gentleman Jack. I was a little reluctant because I typically don't dive into that type of period piece, but it's a great show.
I think what you said too about 80s and 90s and, doing it if there's a reason, to be honest with you, completely commit if there's a reason.
Yeah.
When people say, oh, but it's got to be 80s, and I'm like, then we go the other way. Good, make the 80s a character. Yeah. Every single thing that you love about it, it needs to be embodied by this project.
Yeah, and just to build on that, I think I agree that there has to be a solid reason for why that period is necessary. I once read something that was a period piece that I really didn't understand why it was period. It was, I think, 50s, 60s murder mystery, and I asked the writer, why is this 50s, 60s, and was told, well, it's 50s and 60s because I didn't want them to have internet and cell phones, that would make it too easy. To me, that's not a strong enough reason. So you really want to make sure that the period that you're in is necessary for this story, for these characters, for this world, for reasons that are beyond story convenience.
Makes sense.
My turn?
Yeah?
Alright. Ta-da! You're good.
Okay. This is for Jen. With so many unique shows on streaming platforms, the lines between comedy and drama continually blur. What criteria would you use in deciding the length of a series pilot? And how would you label both half-hour and hour-longs which blend comedy and drama?
Well, it used to be called dramedy, and no longer. I feel like now we have the half-hour drama and the hour comedy.
Are we committed to that? We can say that now?
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, yeah. You can definitely say that. And I definitely, and page count wise, there's a value, because with the half-hour drama that has humor infused, you can go 37 to 40 pages. 37 is where I tell writers is a great place to land it. So I am all about a hybrid. I think the hybrid if it works with your voice and your concept, is a way to stand out. So it is something that I recommend, and page count wise, just know what the page count is, which half hour you're looking at 37, hour long you're looking at 58. For me, the sweet spot is 58. I see people go up to 70. I don't recommend that.
It feels like a short video when you do that.
Definitely.
Yeah. I'm surprised you said as long as 37
Yeah.
for a half hour.
Yes.
Well, I think that, it does make sense because for a half hour, it's not really a minute per page. It's often 30 seconds per page if it's dialogue heavy.
Yes.
So it means that it can still come in at 30 minutes, even if it's...
Yeah, and this is based off of a number of cable shows with what their page count is. So 37, for the single cam network show, you're looking at 28 to 32 pages. But even some people will stress and say, oh my God, but it's 21 or 22 minutes, so therefore I have to, it's like, no, one of the writers on Modern Family said, people have this wrong when they say it's got to be 28 pages. And there are some networks who do believe it should be 28 pages max. But this writer said Modern Family, I think the final shooting draft was 35 plus.
Again, they
pages.
go really fast.
So yeah.
Pace.
Yeah,
And it all comes down to banter.
Yeah, if you look at Mrs. Maisel, those are 80-page
Yes.
scripts.
Yeah.
And I think that part of the determination of where does the piece belong, does it belong in a half hour, does it belong in 1 hour, is really the meat on the bones in terms of story and character and layers that you're going to discover in that half hour, 1 hour. So we tend to take bigger concepts into the 1 hour and keep the smaller character driven in the half hour space. I personally love the half hour space right now. I think it's such a fascinating space and there's so much excellent work that's happening there. I think a lot of drama writers have a tendency to go, well, I'm more dramatic, so I'm going to take the small family story into the 1 hour because This Is Us did it, but they forget that This Is Us had, usually 4 to 5 storylines running on every episode. I think there's so much that can be done if you look at shows like Dead to Me and Atypical and Glow
And
Fleabag, and there's just amazing amount of work that crams in a lot in very little, and it's really exciting.
Fleabag and Dead to Me really are dramas.
Yeah.
So it is looking at the half hour drama as, for me, those were the best shows this year.
They were great.
So
And the quirky-
Fleabag season 2 and Dead to Me.
Yeah, but a lot of humor in them.
Yeah.
A lot of humor.
Yeah.
So if you are going to go half hour, I think there still is the expectation
yes.
of like a
yes.
quirkiness or something like that. I think Homeland might have been the half hour drama that was drama. The one with Julia Roberts? Am I getting it good?
No,
Yes.
no. That's Homecoming.
Homecoming. So Homeland, that's
Yes.
Homecoming.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm
No,
sorry.
that's all right.
But Homecoming was also based on a podcast
Yes.
that had shorter episodes. So they really took that model literally from the podcast to the screen
Right.
and kept it at half.
And I loved Homecoming. I
It
thought
was-
Homecoming
It was great, but I think it did feel
It
so
could have
different because it
profited
was all
if there were more.
Yeah.
just drama.
Yeah.
Also, I think also what you guys said about more story. I think sometimes people think 1 hour because they're like, I just want to tell a longer story. It's like, no, you want to tell a richer story. 1 hour merits 1 hour if you are following an ensemble,
Yep.
if you have enough subplots to sustain not just that pilot, but week to week.
Yeah.
You're following different kinds of stories. If you don't, it's half hour.
Agreed.
Focus on that one character.
Agreed.
Okay.
All right, ready to pick? I picked the
Yeah.
last one.
What do you do when you have mediocre representation? Guys.
Well, definitely we know we will shine a big light on this. I think with right now, all of you are in a very a place of limbo, which representatives are in right now as well. And so I think when you have to recognize that if you feel you have mediocre representation, then why would you stay? Really, you manage what goes on in your career. Your representation is only getting 10%. That means you are responsible for 90% of your career, or if you have a manager and agent for 80% of your career. So if you feel that your representation is mediocre, I personally am of the belief that you shouldn't quit your representation before finding a replacement. I've seen so many writers make that mistake right before staffing and then suddenly not have anyone. So I am of the belief that if you take meetings when you have reps, it probably works for you. And I'm also of the belief, communicate with your manager or agent. If you feel that their work and effort is mediocre on your part, before you make the change, attempt to communicate what isn't working, why it isn't working, and how you can be a partner in the outcome.
So is it sort of like saying, like, look, I'm unhappy in this relationship. I'm thinking about seeing other people.
Yes.
And that way, if you go and you see other people, then you're not really cheating because you already told that person you're gonna maybe, right?
Yes.
But there is a but here,
Okay.
Yes.
which is that while agents can meet with writers who are elsewhere represented, managers are not allowed to poach. So technically, most managers won't meet with you when you are elsewhere managed until you cut those ties, unless there is a personal introduction. Hey, let's all go have coffee. This is not an official conversation. So that is one thing to remember when you are considering switching representation. I think ultimately you have to take a step back and say, okay, my representation is not showing up in the way that I want them to, in the way that they promised me, and they're not following up on what they said. You have to take a step back and first of all evaluate what's happening and why it's happening. So when you're a writer just starting out and you haven't earned your rep any money yet, it's logical to assume that they're going to work a little bit harder to keep their clients who are already making the money. It's not to say they're not going to hustle, but ultimately if you're calling them once a day and you're not getting a call back every day, that's because they are making sure that they're getting paid enough money in order to be able to try and build your career. Ultimately, if you signed with an agent or a manager who made certain promises and said, we're going to do A, B, C, D, E, and kind of stop at B, and you wrote the script, you did the development, but they're not getting you out to meetings. If you see that as systematic behavior, you identify that the manager, for example, is not comfortable setting meetings, their sweet spot is development, that is a problem, and that is the time to go and have a conversation and say, I'm having some concerns. I generally prefer that if reps are fired, if you move on from your representation, be it an agent or a manager, that it's not a surprise for them. I think it's just better business that way to go and have a conversation and say, listen, I'm concerned. I finished the script, you got it out, but it went out to 5 people and you said we're going to get some notes and then do another send, and it never went back out. You said you're going to try and get me out to an agent for staffing season. That never happened. You sent me to one and that was the end of it, and I never had a meeting. You really kind of looking at what were the promises made, and because of that, it's really important when you're signing with representation to first and foremost establish the plan. What are we going to do? What are you expecting from the rep? What is the rep expecting from you? If neither side delivers, then there is a conversation that needs to happen where the writer comes in and says, listen, I have concerns. I have concerns about what we said we'll do that isn't getting done. I have concerns about communication style. I have concerns about the aggressiveness with which you are not selling me, and see if there's a path to course correcting it, because you're significantly better off with the ability to potentially stay with your agent or manager for a long period of time. So have the conversation first, see what you can do to recover the relationship, but ultimately put a clock on it. So don't have the conversation and say, I had the conversation, everything's fine now. Have the conversation, voice what I'm concerned about, without stating unrealistic expectations. I'm upset that you didn't sell my spec script for $500,000. Well, spec scripts are not selling for $500,000, or rarely are doing so from unknown writers. So make sure that your expectations are realistic, that you had a conversation to course correct the relationship, if the other party is willing to do so and agrees that there are other things that can and will need to be done, give it a certain period of time, be it 3 months or 6 months. But if ultimately the behavior remains the same, then it's time to take a step back. Because at the end of the day, having ineffective representation is kind of like having a boyfriend who never shows up on a Saturday night. What's the point?
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So wait, who's up? I don't know.
Jen, you haven't picked it a lot.
Yeah, here you go.
Jen needs to pick.
Okay, next question. Pilar, how do you make a pilot slow burn versus too much?
Slow burn versus too much. Okay, so I love a slow burn pilot. I really do.
Yep.
You don't need to have sort of huge twists and turns at every act break. You definitely need your act breaks, for sure. We need something that is going to change up the story every act. And usually with a 1 hour, we're talking a teaser and 5 acts. But that doesn't mean that you have to have a major event every time, or that it has to be melodramatic in terms of, wait a minute, you cheated on me and now you're pregnant with twins. It doesn't have to be that. So do look at your act breaks, but look at, a choice that is made that is unexpected. Just that one unexpected choice at the end of a first act makes everyone lean in and say, oh, wait a minute. I thought I knew where the character was going, but there's a turn here. Now I'm interested in that character. What are they going to do next? Now maybe at the next act, there is something that pays off that choice, and now it's getting even bigger. So by the end of the pilot, you're in a place where you would now turn around to a friend and go, oh my God, can you believe it, right? But it took you all those act breaks to really get there. So slow burn, look at your act breaks, but they don't have to be huge, just really interesting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And you have to recognize one of the biggest mistakes writers make is they give you too much in the pilot. However, the struggle that writers face is that if you don't put enough in the pilot, then you're not going to sell your pilot. So you have to really recognize what the balance is with regards. I'm a slow burn, however, I'm also of the belief that you have to have a very powerful series arc that you can understand the question that's driving season 1, and then your pilot arc should be one step toward that answer. Certainly when you look at Dead to Me and you look at how the pilot arc is one step toward the series arc answer, and how at the end of Dead to Me there literally are 3 pivotal scenes that are like exclamation point scenes that set up the series, because you want to know the answer to those questions. So be very careful with having enough questions and a strong enough well for your series to be based on, but also be careful of not, as Vince Gilligan said once, shooting, not to be crude, but as he said, shooting your wad too soon, which is what writers do.
People are just going to replace
it's all about a balance. I know.
It'll be a meme.
Yeah.
No, but just to add to what you're saying, I tend to look at it from a more observational point of view with writers. I find that oftentimes newer writers tend to overload their pilot with plot and really not give their characters enough room to breathe. So that's one way. And another thing that I see happen, especially now that we have removed the optics of act breaks from a physical script, a lot of writers will say, well, I'm not writing with act breaks, therefore I shouldn't really focus on that act out. Features are not written with act breaks,
Right.
but we all know exactly where they are.
Right,
Yeah.
there's still that feeling
it's still there.
There's change, there's elevation. Now, along the lines of writing too much, right, because we're talking about slow burn right
Yes.
now, is also what you were getting at, which is you also need to show the show. Because even if you're contributing toward a large arc, there's often a contained story within each episode, and it shows what the show is like.
You have to sell the series.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in your pilot, make sure it's not all just set up, and then you say, "Oh no, I'm getting to the show in the second episode."
Yeah.
It's like, no, let's see what the show is like, even if it's a mini episode with setup in front of it. Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you.
This was great.
This was fun. I really like doing this.
Yes,
Yeah.
I do as well.
Yeah, we did it in the winter. Now we're doing it
Yeah.
in the summer.
Nothing like spending an hour with you guys answering questions.
Yeah, so I think we should tell everybody where they can get in touch and see, come and take classes with the coaches or get coached by the coaches. So here is the On the Page Writer Studio. This is where I have live classes in first draft and rewrite and pitching and all kinds of stuff. But also I've added an online and video conference component to each class. So wherever you are, you can take classes. Go to onthepage.tv to check that out and add any other information that you need about podcasts, consultation, things like that.
You can find me at my website, Jessup.com, myself, my books, everything that I do, how I work, why I work, all of that. So one more time, Jessup.com.
And you can find my website at jengrisanti.com. I also teach classes, and I have a new product that will be coming out in November. So if you are interested in finding out about that, you can sign up for my newsletter on my website. And then my next Storywise teleseminar is going to be in February instead of March. And it's going to be 6 weeks instead of 10 weeks. So all my information is on my website, and I'd love to hear from you.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks again, Jessup, Jen Grisanti. I'm Pilar Alessandra. Thank you for checking in with Ask the Coaches, and we'll see you next time.